Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Daylight AML's risk assessment webinar and training, really. Bob, you ready for this?
I am ready. I'm looking forward to it.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Nathan Nottingham, MLO Force. We are a training company. We like to put the pit crew to everybody's ideas and help them advance as fast as can be. And our best friend is now Bob Simpson, who's our BSA, our SME when it comes to BSA AML. And so we're not hosting this. Bob's hosting this, but I said, I'd like to be a part of it and help you out, Bob. He's like, 100%, let's do this. So without further ado, which no one yet has been able to really, truly define a do for me. Maybe you can, Bob. Let's get started, shall we?
Nathan, thank you. Ren, thanks for producing. Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited to talk to you about risk assessment today. Let me just level set everybody and tell you what I hope to accomplish today. One, we've got some pretty knowledgeable people in our audience. And so you're going to know things about risk assessment that I don't know. And what I'm hoping, my goal today is for everybody to get done with this and go, now that was a useful hour. That really gave me something. I attended my first risk assessment conference about 10 years ago. And the host asked the whole room, 500 people, how'd you get into risk assessment? Did you stumble into it or did you train for it? And almost everybody in the room stumbled into it. They came mostly from the banking, credit union, and mortgage industries, but they came from quality control, they came from origination. But I think one hand went up when they said who actually trained to be in risk. So we come at this from a bunch of different directions, but a lot of times we're just winging it. We get named as the head of risk, or we get the responsibility of assessing risk, and we do our best. We do our best. So what I thought I would do today is tell you why I might have an opinion that matters about risk. Humbly put a few things forward, knowing that you're going to have some contributions as well, and I appreciate that, and I want that. About 10 years ago, I got my private pilot's license, and I had no idea that so much of the pilot training was on risk assessment. And it taught me methodologies to think about risk in a way that I'd never thought about. So here I was, a businessman, a father, a husband in my 50s, and I thought I'd seen my share of risks in the world. And all of a sudden I'm taking notes in class for people whose risk assessment is life or death. It's very serious. So pilots have a way to go about their risk assessment that I have incorporated into my philosophy of running business. And when I'm working with my clients on their risk assessments, I try to bring some of this training in. So what I've got is a bunch of material that I hope is really useful for you. Nathan, you're going to keep me on track if I start to get behind. You're going to be watching my clock for me and making sure that we can get through everything that we need to get through.
I get to be the navigator to some degree. Our altitude and attitude are going to be correct.
You are the navigator. So let me give you what probably many of you have seen in business, which is the SMART acronym, which let's talk about this. This is how you grade your employees. This is how your boss grades you. This is all the stuff internally in your company to see, are you doing a good job? Well, this SMART acronym applies as well to risk assessment and risk management. Make the things you're considering specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. Okay, we're going to get to these, but I'm going to start with the 4 that I add to risk assessment. And these are mine, and these I picked up from the pilot training. To SMART, I add priorities, checklists, training, and expecting the unexpected. Okay, these are the ones that I've picked up in the last 10 years, and maybe they'll be of use to you too. All right, let me start here. The unexpected. You plan, you prepare, but then the pandemic shows up. You plan, you prepare, but somebody T-bones you in an intersection. There are things that there are risks that you approach in life and in business that are just out of the blue. And I start here. I start with the premise that if your job involves risk, your kind of meaning for living is to never say, gosh, I never thought of that. That's wow, that's a surprise to me. If something comes up, you need to be the person that is ahead of it and you thought about it and you expected it. Let me show you this plane wreck. I am going to talk about a couple of plane wrecks during this risk assessment today. I mentioned this one because everybody lived, everybody's fine, everybody walked away from this. But that plane that you see that slammed into the hangar here is an Italian Marchetti. It's a little plane you can pay $300 for and get taken up in the air with an experienced pilot. And for $300, you can play fighter pilot. You can play Tom Cruise. Okay. Well, the pilot of this little plane right here had landed at Fullerton Airport, was done flying, had handled all the checklists, had handled all the risks that were perceived with the pilot, the plane, the passengers, the plan, the programming. This pilot had done his job, but this Marchetti came over the top so close to this Cessna that he smacked the aileron here. And if I go back a slide, you can see there's one antenna here. Well, there should be another antenna here too. This Marchetti went right over the top and hit the wing and took off that antenna. Why do I know this? Because I was the pilot of the Cessna. I had landed at Fullerton. I'd done my job. I'd prepared for everything. And I was taxiing back. I was near the gas dock, and a roar from my 6 o'clock, and this thing came over my head, hit the pavement in front of me, and skidded into that hangar. Again, I bring this up because everybody did walk away from this thing. This reminds me of Mike Tyson's saying that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So the lesson for us in risk assessment is there are some things you just have to get insurance for, whether it is casualty, whether it's accident, whether it's life. There's some things that just come up that you're just plain going to want insurance for. And that covers, you get T-boned in an intersection. That covers your untimely demise. That covers all the things that you can't help. And I must say, I wasn't a hero in this situation. I didn't do anything brave. I didn't do anything wrong either. But this guy came right over my head, and it was unexpected. So, Mike Tyson. So, of all the things that we're going to cover today, that was number 9. It's out of the way. Now let's talk about the things that we might be able to control, assess, and manage. Okay.
So I'm going to interject here now because I've always wondered how you became the silver fox. I've now seen the evidence. From that point on, your hair was silver and your crown of wisdom shines brightly.
You had a dark head of hair when that happened. So priorities. Let's talk about them. In flying planes, it's aviate, navigate, and communicate. Those are the 3 priorities. You've all had the experience. I trust you've all had the experience of being in an airplane and you're about to land and suddenly the plane isn't landing anymore. It's taking off. Pilot throttles up the flaps, and you were landing, but the pilot saw that you were too right, too left, too high, too low, and decides to go around. When the pilot does that, again, the priorities of aviate, navigate, and communicate come into play. The pilot has surprised all the passengers. The pilot has surprised the tower, but the pilot's in charge, and they make that decision to go around. Aviate, fly the plane. 2, fly it somewhere intentionally. And 3, communicate, finally. But even the tower is surprised when that pilot goes around. He'll get to talking to the pilot eventually, but he's not. He's adhering to his priorities. And this principle stayed with me through my training. I thought, well, what governs our priorities in the world we live in banking? Let me start here. with the priorities that are laid out for us by the Department of Treasury through FinCEN. I know a lot of people on the call today have BSA responsibilities. They're in mortgage companies, they're in banks, and they have a responsibility to adhere to the requirements of the Bank Secrecy Act. All right. Well, FinCEN has been very explicit about what your priorities are. They came out with this last year, and they gave us 8 things that we've got to account for in our risk assessment. So even if you don't think you have any exposure to the countering the financing of terrorism, your risk assessment has to say, we thought about it, we've looked at it. Here are the priorities as FinCEN gives them to you, and they want you to incorporate these in all of the actions that you take. So preventing money laundering. All right. We tend sometimes in the United States not to worry about money laundering the way they do in the rest of the world. Real estate and real estate transactions are a really popular way to launder money around the world. FinCEN seems to be really aware of that and wants you to be aware of it as well. So these are the priorities as determined by FinCEN. Now, we can have many business priorities. This is where it gets really interesting. You notice I started and I said those SMART items are how you are judged, are how your employees are judged. We're talking about priorities, and now I'm taking it to the C-suite. Now I'm taking it to, you don't do this on your own as the head of risk. You are having conversations internally with the C-suite about what are our priorities as a company between short-term gain and long-term profit. Where are we deciding to go? What are our values? The example I often use is, are you a company that's going to cut benefits before you cut staff? Well, that's an uncomfortable question to ask, but it goes to your values. No, we're going to keep our benefits. We're going to keep our benefits as we provide a great place for people to work. Those things need to be recognized and talked about. So I put 10, 15 of them here. This list could run 100 long under the category of your people and your culture, under customers and market, risk and compliance, operations. What are your priorities? What are the things that you value most? And the reason I like this better than a mission statement is a mission statement is just kind of seems shallow to me. But when you really dig into your values as a company, these values determine the risks that you're going to take. The risks that you're going to face hurt, attack, go at your priorities. And again, go back to aviate, navigate, communicate. I know it makes you uncomfortable when the pilot doesn't come on and say, hey, we're going around, but that's not his job when he throttles up to take the plane around. Risks attack our priorities. Let's start by fully examining priorities.
Let me interject there for a second, Bob, because if you go back to that slide you were just on there, lots of lists there. One of the things I saw here is that it's okay from a risk analysis to say, you might say, hey, we are going to prioritize getting as many loans as possible. Therefore, we're calling as many lead sheets as we can. There's still a risk there. We don't know who we're going to talk to necessarily up front. It's not your job in risk analysis to say, is that a right or wrong activity? It's your job to identify that's what we're doing.
That's right. And I'm going to, exactly right. Now I'm going to talk to you about something I see sometimes, but not often inside of various lenders, which are heat maps. And let's talk about what a heat map is. If you're talking about all the risks to your values, all the risks to your priorities, sure, fraud, money laundering, employee dishonesty, these are all things that are a potential risk to you. Let me go here and just to make the point clear, talk about what are the risks to you when you're on the road, when you're driving. Let's think about that. Sure, road conditions, the weather. If this heat map represents the risks that you face, okay, so let's go back to our driving. All of the things that can be a risk to you when you are on the road. Somebody else's aggressive driving, debris. If you list all your risks here, then this column is to illustrate the potential exposure of those risks. How likely are you to be exposed to that risk? All right. If you leave your house on a sunny, clear day, you are not likely to run into ice storms. Okay. So your ice storms, your bad road conditions are a 1. You're not likely to run into them. The damage potential. What if you are leaving the house on a bad weather day? What's the potential damage of that? Pretty high. I mean, you could lose control of your car, and then you get this weighted score. So let me show you how these work and recommend that you employ these when you are doing your risk assessment at the company. Let's just say that this risk here is the risk of bad weather, and it's looking pretty bad today. So I'm going to assign that a 4. The damage potential, because you live in Tornado Alley, is a 5. That score just went to a 20, and it shows up red. This allows you to do a weighted analysis of the risks that you face. What's your exposure, and what's the potential damage should that risk occur? Let me flip this just a second and talk to you who are dealing with BSA AML. What's the chance of an OFAC hit, that you're going to do business with somebody on the specially designated nationals list? About a 1. But if something bad happens and you do business with that person, that damage potential could be a 5. So you end up with this score for OFAC compliance. What's the chance that you might, did you have a question, Nate?
No, I'm just saying the colors and the grading is super clear, because this was something I got thrust into trying to do one of these one time, and I found this tool that and something you had told me. I went, it's not my duty to validate the risk. It's my duty to assess the risk. And all I had to do was kind of go like, could it happen? Yeah. Would it happen? Maybe. And if the options are like, your weather one is probably the one that rings true the most to me. It's like, hey, it's Texas and it's springtime, and we got hit with some pretty good hail yesterday, but it started out sunny. Like, it's the time of year in North Texas where we wear layers every single day. And that was the most like aha moment when doing this, doing risk assessment. If you're a small shop on here, if you're just like, I just got told I have to do these, this was the easiest tool ever to put your risks on the left, your risks, right? Like, it could be a risk, and then just put numbers to it and watch the colors, because colors made it so easy to acknowledge these.
And thank you for that. And when you're going to have a meeting with the C-suite on your company risks, this is where your eye is going to go. You're going to have a meeting on risk 3. That turned up red. That's going to tell you the meeting that you're going to have with the C-suite. You're probably not going to talk about risk 1. You're probably not going to talk about this risk either. But your meetings are going to focus on the higher scores. And you're going to have to defend why that might be an exposure risk of 1, 0, depending upon your business type. But I encourage these types of tools because they will give you the chance to analyze. This one's going to jump right out at you. You're going to see where your risks might be. So I encourage the use of heat maps when you're talking about, your potential exposure. Okay. Now, let me go to checklists. I'm going to check my time just to make sure I'm 20 minutes in, so I'm good. All right. Pilots are big on checklists, and I encourage them for key operations, important operations. Here's the checklist that I use just to start a little Cessna 172. This is the number of things that I've got to do just to start the engine and to get ready to go. They establish a certain pattern to make sure that nothing gets out of the way. And you go through these, you start to feel that you want to show your instructor that I've got this, I know what the third step is, and you start to go too fast, and they always slow you down and go, no, they want to see you check the checklist. The example that I use when I'm talking to people about the value of checklists is we all know that story of Sully landing the plane in the Hudson. Um, he loses both engines just a few seconds after takeoff from LaGuardia, and Jeff Skiles. I mean, imagine there is actually a checklist for losing both engines. Skiles goes right to that checklist. They go through it. They are under pressure, but they have to hit every step to make sure that they're handling an emergency. I encourage the use of checklists in critical operations. What happens when somebody inside of your organization finds potential fraud? What do they do with it? Do your junior people know what their step is, what's required? One thing that I often see, and it's a good thing, is institutions have confidential emails that they can say, hey, I saw something sketchy. I'm not sure, but we need to take a look at this. And they draw this protocol for people to follow in the event that they've got suspicious activity. I asked ChatGPT.
I'll say that Sully comes from Denison, Texas. So I've met him, Sully Sullenberg. Like, he's a cool dude. And number two, one thing you shared with me when we talked about flight checklists, and I went, oh gosh, that's a great analogy. Again, in risk assessment, it's not ours to solve it. It's ours to plan if it happens. So if you find yourself being one of those people that loves murder mystery podcasts, this is right up your alley. And if you don't, go find somebody who loves them, because you can sit there and go, hey, what's the worst case scenario that could happen in this situation? And those people will figure it out, and they'll just like listen to them draft the story, because that's the fastest way to come up with a great checklist.
The idea of a checklist is, I think it's terrific, because it gives you a way to, for example, judge your people to, are they doing a good job? Did they hit all of the spots that they had to hit? I went through this checklist to change a tire, and I went, no, I would add that you got to put out flares behind the vehicle. It's not on this list. This one came from chat. So if I am customizing a list for the proper protocols inside of my institution, sure, I might rely on chat to give me the bones of it. But when you're fleshing it out, there are things that you're going to add. I noticed this checklist, it says retrieve the jack, but it doesn't say open the trunk. I might add one, open the trunk, put out flares behind it. If you get your car back and the jack isn't back in the car, you'll know that they skipped 17. You'll know that your people skipped a step, and that will give you as a manager a way to grade everybody's performance. So I had an experience 20 years ago. I had a marvelous boss when AIG was majority owner of my company. I had a marvelous boss who told me, Bob, you're terrible with metrics. I said, what are you talking about? What do you mean I'm terrible? I thought I was great with everything. She said, you don't know the value of them. You don't know how valuable they can be to you. Let me show you. And she showed me over the course of a couple of years, the real value of using metrics in management, in performance reviews. She said, and she taught me that you can hire and fire and reward and punish, all without any emotion. You just hit your mark. You get your people to hit their mark. Well, this kind of checklist gives you the ability to manage your people and go, are they doing it? Are they doing the job that I asked them to do? So the checklist allows you to not only make sure that something is done well, but that your people are doing the job. Now, let me give you another example where I totally failed. My wife and I were on Oahu when a Category 5 hurricane was rolling across the Pacific, cutting under the Big Island and headed right towards Oahu. We were on the North Shore having a great time. It was totally windy. It was not beach weather, but it was a blast. My wife, who loves me dearly, told me to go to the local market and get emergency supplies. So I did. I came back with rum, pineapple juice, Pringles, and Chardonnay. And she looks at me and she says, seriously, what is the matter with you? I had no case of water. We had a failure to communicate. She told me to do a job, And I thought I'd done the job, right? That was not what she expected to be done on her checklist. I spent 2 summers when I was college age working at a machine shop. 2 full summers working along guys who were at drill presses. And it was a really cool machine shop because what we did was very high tech parts. It was a spectacular operation. They made parts for the Kitt Peak telescope. They made missile parts for Thiokol. It was very, very high quality machining. Well, I didn't know anything about machining. So I got the job of deburring parts, taking the sharp edges off of big metal pieces, right? I've got a file, little sandpaper kind of, working on these parts. And I had a part that I can only describe as as an engine block. It was think of an engine block. It was a complex piece of metal that was 1,000,000 pounds, and I had to take the rough edges off it. Well, halfway through the day, I thought I was done with the job, and Buddy, this old machinist, comes by and just, with all the disdain he could muster, just said, "You don't think you're done with that, do you?" And I didn't know what done meant. And so the guy who'd hired me came over and said, "No, no, no. You have to be able to drape a silk shirt over every edge of that piece without it catching." And all of a sudden the light went on and I went, "Oh, that is not what I did here." I kind of eyeballed it and took the rough edges off, but you're not running a silk shirt over this piece of equipment. All of a sudden my checklist changed. I knew I had to do the job differently. When you give your people checklists on how to do a job correctly, you are able to train and you're able to correct and you're able to get things to do other than just bring you rum and pineapple juice when you're stuck in a Cat 5. By the way, we got out on time. It was great. It's a great trip. All right. Let's talk about training. That is part of risk assessment. That is part of what's required of you by FinCEN to comply with BSA. And it should be a part of everything you're doing running your risk department. So let's talk about it. It's for everyone. I was so impressed this week with this guy out of Arizona. This guy was flying this blue plane, and it is a plane that's intended to land in water. And he put it down on a street in Arizona. And as he's being interviewed, look at that guy. How old is that guy? He's been flying forever. But his quote is, "I thank," not think, it got written wrong. "I thank all those guys that were the trainers at American, at US Air, and American West." And he went on at length about the reason he survived this was because of the training that he got. Wouldn't you think a guy this age with this kind of experience is entitled to say, "Oh, I've got it all. I've got it. I don't need to train." He survives a on-street landing of a seaplane. And he says, "I want to thank the guys that trained me." It was tremendous. I mean, it's a tremendous testament to no matter how old or experienced you are, you benefit from continued training. Every pilot has to do a biannual flight review where you go and you get checked out. Can you fly the plane? Do you know the rules, both ground school and in the air, every 2 years, private pilot, to make sure that you can still fly a plane. But I love this guy saying, not, "Oh yeah, I was a great pilot. I want to thank the guys that continue to train me." It's marvelous, marvelous statement for that. You train everyone from the beginning hires, the new hires, to the most experienced people in the corner office. Now, you should be training them with bespoke training, meaning if you're training your people at the front desk, they get, here's anti-money laundering, here's financial crime, here's things they never thought about. When people come to work for your institution and they have no experience in fraud, it's all new to them. I tell my family stories about things and they're used to my stories now, but I've seen so many frauds and so many bad behaviors over time. My family's not amazed anymore when I tell the stories, but your training needs to be bespoke, like a good suit. The new people get welcome to anti-money laundering. The corner office gets different lessons. It gets, hey, here's where other institutions are getting in trouble. Here's where people are getting fined. Here's how they screwed up what they had to do to comply with anti-money laundering laws. So let's talk about the recent consent orders. Who's getting fined? And I will mention parenthetically, people are getting fined because they largely ignored recommendations or remediations that were in their audits. They pick your favorite. They didn't file suspicious activity reports, and they're not complying with that. Well, they were told about it. Then another year went by and they were told about it. And the third year goes by and they still haven't filed a SAR. They're going to have problems if you're ignoring. So everyone gets trained. It should be bespoke to the position and as needed. Yes, it says yearly, but when you have new people, new hires, stay up to speed on the existing frauds and the things that you need to train about. And I'll say this, the people who handle your wires should have very specific training. There are a lot of wire fraud scams out there. And so those people should be getting training that the new receptionist isn't getting. I think those people need training that the corner office isn't getting. They need to be sophisticated with regard to the frauds that are out there. So this one was on my television here recently, Los Angeles story about real estate. This one should worry everybody. With AI, these guys created all the deeds, all the transfer deeds, everything that were needed to steal this property. Now, when you steal a property, you can get it back because it's fraud and everything's void. It's not voidable. Fraudulent transfers are just plain void, but you got to have an attorney to get your money back. Stay current on what's in your area. Don't get surprised. I do think that every BSA officer on their card should say, I never get surprised. That's your job title. Be current on what's out there. There are all kinds of ways through Google and other ways to get alerts for frauds that are happening even in your particular area. There's the mortgage fraud blog, which you should probably keep track of. There are FinCEN announcements as to crime. But be aware of the latest frauds and scams that are out there. You should be the most knowledgeable one in your company about what you're seeing out there. When you train, let's talk about the high risk things. We talked about our heat map, right? So when you are training, what are the high risk? Let me talk to mortgage lenders here directly just a second. My experience, my background is in mortgage lending. So the high risk, large cash out for a weird borrower profile. You've seen them. What else is high risk? Large recent deposits, maybe gifts from out of the country. These can expose you to risk. I know number 6, questionable occupancy. It's kind of a boring fraud. Nobody thinks much of it, but it can mean that you've got a human trafficking house. I've seen pot farms. I know all you have as well. The people didn't move into it, but the whole place is a grow house. I have seen terrorist dens. I was investigating a mortgage fraud down in Houston, and I got a call from the FBI saying those guys are really dangerous. You might want to back off of that one. And I did. I want to do my job, but I don't want to get killed doing it. You should also train people in low risk examples. No cash out refi. The best example that I give of a very low risk transaction is a no cash out refinance with somebody who's been on their job for 20 years. He's been in the same house for 15 years. This is where your new people should cut their teeth. You should be having your new people work on maybe the less risky kind of transactions. And what I want to do on the subject of training is to encourage you to have what I call Freaky Fridays, where you've got your experienced people. Bring some pizza in, feed your people, bring some pizza in, and have your experienced people tell your junior people about what they're seeing, what they've seen out there. Sketchy tax papers, sketchy transactions. I mean, the prospect of land flips is brand new to some of your new people. What I want to encourage everybody to do to temper your risk of the entire organization is to make everybody a seasoned pro. Everybody should have a war story. And if that means that it's your senior people sharing stories with the junior people, get into the files, show the paperwork, show what was false, show what was sketchy, and get your junior people up to speed. When I first started practicing law, I asked the partner that was training me, man, this is confusing, the litigation. How long is it going to take me to learn how all these chess pieces move around the board? And her answer was 3 years. There's nothing you can do to shorten it. You're just going to need to work in litigation for 3 before you can understand what a demur is and how to respond to discovery requests. There is also probably a 3-year track record to be involved in mortgages before you can go, yeah, I've seen that. Well, get your older people, not older, but more experienced people talking to your younger people. I think that's going to help. Now, on the subject of training and human risks, this is very, very big in pilot training, and it applies to business as well. You've got people's attitudes. We've all worked with those people. You've got errors in judgment, and you have temporary difficulties. If you're in charge of risk, you have to take these things into consideration to properly run your department. Let's talk about some of these things. Human attitudes. Impulsiveness, again, this comes from my pilot training, machismo and vulnerability, anti-authoritarianism, and resignation. Oh man, this might as well happen. These are all real things. They may affect you individually. They may affect your employees. Impulsiveness, phishing attacks. I've succumbed to a phishing attack. I can't believe I did it. As soon as I hit the connect button, I was like, oh man, did I just do that? Impulsiveness is a bad trait, and it's going to infect you sometimes. It's going to affect your people sometimes. But these attitudes create risk for your organization. We've all seen them. The machismo. Hey, waive this condition. Invulnerability. So often I'll talk to owners of small to mid institutions, and they go, we don't have fraud here. That's a warning sign. If you think you don't have fraud, you're not really aware. If you have money, somebody's trying to get it from you. This is John F. Kennedy Jr.'s airplane. It's his actual airplane that he owned. And this airplane accident, I respectfully, I'm not making light of anyone who has perished in a plane accident. It is used in the pilot community to teach aeronautical decision making. There were so many holes in the Swiss cheese that lined up to cause this accident with Kennedy. No single one of these would have been enough to cause the accident. It was a high performance plane. I wrote plan. It was a high performance plane. He only had about 300 hours. He got caught in bad traffic getting out to the airport in New Jersey to take off, so he was behind. He just had a cast taken off his foot. Night was coming. The weather was not what it needed to be. I'm sure he was getting some external pressure. He was trying to fly to a wedding, and he took off anyway. Too late, stressed, with his wife and his sister-in-law. And it's just, as they say in the pilot community, a matter of all the holes in the Swiss cheese lining up. Not one thing took him down, but a combination of 8 or 10 different things. Then, I'm safe is an acronym that pilots use to analyze both themselves and their employees. And are you ill? Are you under medication? Stressed? Alcohol is 8 hours bottle to throttle. Fatigue, are you tired? Did you sleep last night? And the last one is emotion. Are you angry at the traffic, or did you just come out of a fight with your significant other? These things can affect your performance, and they can affect your employees' performance. They may not be flying planes for you, but are your employees driving cars on your behalf? Are they insured? Have they been drinking? Are they stressed? These are risks that you are required to manage. You're required to manage them for yourself, and you're required to manage them for your people. So yeah, I'm safe is the acronym that's used. The second one there, medication, Tennessee Fly Girl. This was a tragic accident that happened this last year. This is a guy I follow online, Juan Brown, Blanco Lirio. He is an excellent source of information on aviation incidents and accidents. And he got the final FAA report on Tennessee Fly Girl, who crashed. And looking at the toxicology report, she was on a serious amount of Xanax. Well, if any of you have taken Xanax before, you know that it clouds your judgment and it clouds your thinking. This was a risk that her passenger did not know of when he got in the plane with her. Again, your people may not be flying planes for you, but they may be driving cars for you or interacting with the public. There have been some cases in the mortgage industry, my industry, where people have gotten drunk at conferences and behaved badly. That is a corporate risk. That is something that you face. And it's just one of those things as your head of risk that you've got to ask and control. It's as uncomfortable as saying, what happens if our CFO is a crook? That's a terrible thing to even ask. But what happens? What are the controls around dishonest, high-ranking people at our company? This falls in the same category. All right. So I said there are 9 keys to do it right. We've covered 6, 7, 8, and 9, and I'm going to more quickly go through the first ones on our list. I said that 6, 7, 8, and 9 are really the issues that you're talking about with the C-suite. Now let me talk about some of the specific things that you can do to control risk. Under the term of being specific, let me reference, because I know a number of you with us here today have Bank Secrecy Act responsibilities. If you're being specific about controlling your risk, here are the things you're going to be very specific about. You're going to ensure that all suspicious activity reports are filed on time. Number 3, you're going to ensure all employees complete their AML training. Number 4, you're going to screen everybody against the OFAC list. You're going to be very specific about how you are complying. Is it measurable? My boss who told me I wasn't good with metrics, I learned to love them. You're going to track things. I had a system that allowed me to check when somebody logged in at their desk who was working for me, and what was the lag time between when they logged in and when they opened their first file. I would see somebody downstairs at the Starbucks. They'd logged in at 8:00 nothing, and at 20 to 9, they're still down at the Starbucks. So we were able to track our metrics and measure that distance between logging in and touching your first file. These are the types of things that you're going to want to do when you are evaluating your risk. All right. Are your objectives achievable? This is important because I've seen some bad examples of management setting objectives that were not achievable. I was never happy as an AIG employee with the fact that Hank Greenberg set a goal really of 15% year-on-year growth, no matter what the environment was. Well, you in mortgage industry know setting 15% year-on-year growth rates may not be achievable in certain markets, that maybe you should be more concerned about profit margins and controlling costs and some other things than 15% year-on-year growth. I will note, and not parenthetically, that AIG had major problems in the 2008 meltdown because of some actions of a very limited scope number of AIG employees out of London. Pressure to produce is good, but unreasonable pressure might leave you with unachievable goals. So in life, you've got personal life risks that you need to manage: your health, your job, your cash flow, your personal relationships, your parental duties. You're trying to manage a lot. In business, you have all kinds of things. We've been talking about them here, and I've tried to make this risk assessment suitable no matter whether you're considering it for your personal life or your business, no matter what that business may be. The 9 keys to do it right are real. They're super useful. And I think that they should be a good benefit to you. I'm going to send everybody here who's on the webinar today my risk assessment for mortgage lenders. It's a 40-something page PDF, and I'll send you as well an outline for this course. If you have any questions or comments, love to hear them. If you have advice for me on risk assessment, more than open to it. It's a great topic, and it can vary so much by industry, by people's different circumstances, that I'd love to get your input back. So pleasure.
Right.
I'm
Bob,
really happy
you landed
you're here.
that plane pretty. You landed that plane pretty well. I'm loving it. So a couple questions have come in, and let me tee these up here.
Okay.
One asked by Lubomira that she's used OFAC list for due diligence in the past, but has not done such due diligence in a decade because she runs one of the best data analyst companies I know of. And so what external data sets, which made me laugh when I saw her ask this question, but what external data sets, if at all, are needed to do AML risk assessment in 26?
To do AML risk assessment, if we're going to talk specifically about OFAC, the specially designated national.
Exactly. Yeah. Take it one and then broad. So yeah, let's look at data analyst sets for all of it.
All right. So there is a list for those of you who maybe have passing familiarity with the specially designated nationals list. It is a list of people, countries, and even vessels that you are not to do business with. It's published by FinCEN. The last one that I looked at was about 2,400 pages. It is a Russian, Ukrainian who's who of business people that you can't do business with. So they are designated by FinCEN, which parenthetically is a couple hundred people inside a treasury. All right. So the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network says these people you can't do business with. And the sanctions for doing business with them are pretty severe. And so you're trying to run an operation where you don't do business with these people. Iranians are on the list. Let me give you an example of how tender it can be. One big bank sold a proprietary software system to another bank to allow them to do their business, knowing that that other bank had some Iranian clients. The bank got sanctioned for selling them that system. So that's how tender the subject is. You can't do business with people on the SDN list, the OFAC list, Office of Foreign Asset Control. So there are commercial services. I don't need to mention them by name, but there are any number of the big ones you know that provide the lists and the scrubs to make sure that you're not doing business with anybody on that list. Let me highlight for everybody one weakness I see when I'm talking to mortgage companies and they've run the check. Sometimes they don't run the check right before closing, and new people have entered that transaction either as a grantor of a gift or as a co-borrower. They've entered the transaction right at the end, and the OFAC check wasn't done. It was done to start, but 30 days later, it wasn't updated. So there are ways that those things slip through. You just need to be super cautious.
There are data sets there. There's lists that have to be checked against. That's a good one. This question from Aaron was, what have you seen as the biggest gaps today in due diligence, and how are they addressing them in a scalable way?
Due diligence. Let's talk about that. The the due diligence aspect of it can fall under quality control. It can fall under a fraud department. It can fall under a risk department. There's a division sometimes between the people inside of an institution that handle fraud and those that handle the anti-money laundering. It can be the anti-money laundering can be viewed as compliance sometimes, while fraud is a different kettle of fish. Institutions can think, well, it's fraud, that's going to be handled by legal. And if it's compliance, then they'll handle anti-money laundering aspect of it. So the communication between those two is important. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I do like to see that in a lending sense, bank, credit union, mortgage lender, what's getting reported to FinCEN are the mortgage frauds, the active mortgage frauds. And it's not handled by legal. It's more handled by the anti-money laundering department. So it's a question of budget and focus.
Will you go back a slide or two? The 9 keys to do it right. I think it was one of your last. There it is. Last one. So looking over this one, you got SMART, and then you're 6, 7, 8, 9, which you put out: prioritize, checklist, training, the unexpected. Somebody's watching this right now. They're really new to this whole process plan. They appreciate what you shared. It's common sense. It makes sense, but you put it in a really good story order. But I still have to start, and I see 9 things. What's my first step? Which is the first one I need to jump into, especially if this is the first time I'm diving into it?
Do your priorities. Decide what's important to you as a company. Let me wrap the first 5 of them all up in the use of seatbelts in a car. It helps you to think about it and say, okay, specific, yeah, do your seatbelt. Measurable, you bet. Achievable, you bet. Relevant, yep. Timely. One time I was pulling out of a parking garage and I was pulling on my seatbelt and I got pulled over. And the cop said, do you know why I pulled you over? I said, I have no idea. He said, your seatbelt wasn't on. You were pulling it on as you drove away. And I said, oh, I always do that. And he said, don't do that. I said, okay. So ever since that happened, I pulled my seatbelt on before I pull out of the parking lot. These are things that you can put procedures around and checklists once you know that your priority is either drive safely or don't get a ticket. Whatever your priority is, that's what you're determining you're going to do. Okay. So that's where you set up 1 through 5, is once you know everything that's important to you.
Bob, thank you so much. This has actually been really easy to translate into actionable steps, I think. So anybody who's been in a larger company, like, hey, I'm trying to get this, anybody who's like just been added something, I'll say this for the training aspect. Some of the times when we dive into this, we're like, well, we'll just buy whatever training is needed. The reality is customizable training is actually really efficient and effective when you work with Bob from Daylight AML. And if you need some customized training for your team on this topic, Bob is the guy. Contact him. As he throw that last slide up there, Bob. That's your contact info right there.
Thanks, Nathan. Thanks everybody for attending, and glad you're here.
All right, y'all. Be well, be safe. We'll talk to you soon.